Now, when it comes to Halloween time, what games do you usually think of? Amnesia, Outlast, Five Nights at Freddy's? What about the ones that have a little bit more action? Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, Ghosts and Goblins, Doom? That's a good one, by the way. But if you ask me, mine would be Castlevania. What's up everyone, my name is Biotrex, I'm a Twitch streamer, a guitar shredder, and the wielder of bone sticks with meaty tips. Now, I will be completely honest here. As much as I enjoy the aesthetic, the atmosphere, the theme, the enemies, and the stories, I wouldn't say that I am a massive Castlevania fan. And yes, I've watched the Netflix series and even beaten the first game a while ago, but I still wouldn't count myself as such. You see, I've always liked the Victorian era media aside from Castlevania, like Van Helsing, Liza P, Vampire Hunter D, and I will absolutely admit that I've rewatched League of Extraordinary Gentlemen a little too many times. Now, if you've been living under a rock, Castlevania is not just a game but a franchise that has been running for a good part of 4 decades strong, which is pretty much on par with the Mario series, the Metroid series, and even the series of The Last Imaginations and the Missions of Wyverns. In addition to that, it is also created by Konami, who is well known for making Yu-Gi-Oh!, Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and shooting themselves in the foot by And the reason why I'm talking about Castlevania is because I want to experience not 1, not 2, but 3 of the first Castlevania games. So make sure you grab your garlic flavored popcorn because who knows, you'll be throwing those against creatures of the eve. Now that I think about it, that's literally just boy bawang. Yeah, just go ahead and buy like a pack of boy bawang that is basically a garlic flavored corn snack from the Philippines and slingshot those bastards or whatever aswang you see. Now before I continue, I want to give a massive thanks to my Twitch subs and Patreon supporters as they help me and help keep the content going. More on that later because for now, I'm ready to whip some hot sucky. I'm ready to whip some hot ink. I'm ready to whip some evil spooky monsters. Woo! So this yellow-orangey guy here is Simon Belmont. Why does it matter? Because it does. Now with all seriousness, his family, the Belmont clan, are a bloodline responsible for slaying creatures of the night. So think of skeletons, werewolves, zombies, ghouls, and lastly, the vampire king himself, Vlad Dracula. If you're wondering where we are, well, we are at the lair of the vampire king himself, Castlevania. And if you think this is the first time this has happened, that's wrong, because Dracula himself gets resurrected every 100 years or so, and until that time, any Belmont alive will be tasked to fight and defeat him, which is awesome. And would you listen to that? The music is so heroic, so triumphant, which I find very fitting for building us up for the task. Now, usually, you start with a Vampire Killer Whip, which is a standard weapon for the Belmont clan, and while there are other kinds of vampire slaying whips in this world, we're going to focus on the ones present in this game, and destroying these fire thingies would drop the chain whip that replaces your current one and I believe also does double the damage. However, if you get another chain whip, it would then upgrade your current one and making it longer, allowing you to hit enemies with more reach. And by the way, when you attack, it isn't immediate as there is a wind up before the attack even happens, which is important because you can't just really spam your attack as you must be precise with your timing and whenever you want to hit the enemy, which is a tradition that would later on be used in later games like Monster Hunter and even the Soulsborne series. And sometimes you will get a sub-weapon drop which includes a dagger, the axe, the cross, the holy water, and the stopwatch. Now the dagger just shoots a straight projectile, and while the cross also does the same, it also boomerangs back. As for the axe, it arches, which is great for flying enemies or the ones above you, but is tremendously horrible for close range. Now the holy water, while it doesn't have a lot of range, it is quite good when it comes to very close range because when you throw it to the ground, it causes blue flames to come up and therefore dealing damage constantly until it expires. And lastly, which is my favorite, is the stopwatch, which literally stops time itself. Now, I'm fully aware that it becomes obsolete for later boss fights, but with a platform-heavy game like this, with their merciless, ever-spawning enemies, yeah, the stopwatch can definitely help you buy some time. You get that? Because it's a stopwatch and it allows you to buy time? It's... Okay, we're moving on. And if you have any of these sub-weapons and you want to use them, well, you can do so by holding up while pressing the attack button. However, that can be problematic, especially if you're on a set of stairs or next to them, because the moment you press the up button, the game will then assume that you meant to go up. and any plans of using your sub-weapon is pretty much thrown out the window. On top of that, using these sub-weapons isn't free, as you'll be needing hearts in order to use them. And yes, I know it might be confusing because hearts usually indicate health, but for Castlevania, it's basically your mana in a sense, and to heal your HP is to consume literally meat that is hidden in walls. Like, I'm not sure if that's edible, but it's fine because I can take any kind of— wait, hold on a s. And if you're wondering what the enemy health bar is doing there, well, I don't know either, but just keep in mind that it is the boss's HP and not the regular enemies. So to get these hearts is to either slay enemies or destroy candles, and yes, it may drop money bags, but that's usually only for the high score and nothing more. Now, the enemies of the first stage will include zombies, black panthers, bats, mermen, fishmen, and lastly the boss, which is an oversized bat. And as difficult as it may look, it really isn't that. And also, you gotta factor in that I have the stopwatch, which is pretty OP because it also stops the boss. As for the second stage, which includes a little bit of platforming and the requirement of positioning, and the enemies here are the knights, the bone dragon head turrets, ghosts, bats, and the dreaded Medusa heads. Like, even if you are on a tough platforming spot, these goddamn bodiless bastards will literally set out to disrupt your positioning. Now, it is obvious that you must avoid the spiky bits, right? Now, what do you think happens when you touch the non-spiky bits? You die. And just when you think the small Medusa heads are bad, their boss is a big Medusa head. However, now for stage 3, oh wait, hold on, damn, this music. Alright, let's try shredding it out. Now the enemies here are the goats, the bone-throwing skeletons, the Igors, the fucking Medusa heads, the turrets, and the fucking swooping ravens. Like, oh my god, they are so annoying. And while there's some platforming to do, this level overall isn't too bad. But the boss? Oh boy. This is where the time-stopping stopwatch starts to stop working on bosses. Yeah, that was a mouthful. However, Stage 4 starts with whoa. Stage 4 starts you off with some platform timing and positioning, especially since there are a few moving platforms with flying fishmen that spit fireballs and annoying bats. And I mean, look at this. Like, if there's a bat flying at you while there are fishmen jumping out of nowhere while you're crouching down to avoid getting pushed by these stalactites, you're basically screwed. And once you're done with this watery pain in the ass, you'll then be greeted by the Igor dropping birds. And And the reason why I hate them so much is the fact that they move so randomly that it's so annoying to time and deal with. And oh, by the way, they just won't stop spawning until you're done with this area. And this is when the game really flips not one, but two of the same amount of Igor dropping bird fingers at you. Because this boss, oh my god, this boss. This boss is a two-part boss, not two-phase, two parts. Why? Because while you can attack the fireball shooting Igor, which stuns him, the HP does not get reduced. That's because you need to attack the Frankenstein's monster looking bastard in order to reduce it. And the fact that I'm a save stating filthy casual, I pretty much save set it with only equivalent to 2 hits left. And now, it feels like I'm playing Ghosts and Goblins again. And remember when I said that the stopwatch is obviously for little bosses? Well, I might have lied, because it does stop time but only for a few milliseconds at best, which is probably more than enough. Now at the start of stage 5 isn't too bad, and yes, it did have some Igors at the start, but at least it's only a few of them. Now the enemies in this stage are Igors, red undying skeletons, bone-throwing boneheads, turrets, heavy armored axe-throwing knights, and the f***ing Medusa heads. And while the start of the stage isn't too bad to begin with, the one before the boss fight is absolutely diabolical. Like, look at this. They are heavy armored knights, and by the way, the knights can throw axes from an upper or lower angle. And on top of that, they boomerang back to it. And just when you think it's bad enough, I'll tell you now that the knights take 9 hits to kill. But you only take 4 hits, but not them because they take 9 hits. So you can't even concentrate attacking it because you're too busy dodging the Medusas. But you can't even dodge the Medusas because you're too busy dodging the axes. But you can't dodge the axes because you're trying to hit the knight. But you can't hit the knight because the game is drawing you crazy! Oh my god. The boss. The Grim Reaper. It is such an annoying one to deal with, especially with these flying sights. And yeah, when the Grim Reaper lands on the floor, he will then respawn another set of sights, or sickles, I don't even know, I'm too pissed off to care at this point. And it's the fact that they all come at you at the same time that makes it annoying. In addition to that, you got this gutless sumbitch flying at you at times. And like the last boss, this one took me a while to beat. Like pretty much half an hour or so. And after spending all that time with 2 health points left, now, as a reminder, one of the crucial issues when it comes to playing Castlevania is the fact that when you get hit, you get knocked back. Yo, what's up? You really gotta stop dropping your guitar picks, man. You know what? Just stand there for like a second. Okay. What is that? No, it's just a slipper. Don't worry about it. Now on flat platforms, that's no issue. However, if there are multiple enemies surrounding you, then you are susceptible to getting thrown off. And sometimes you get stun lock knocked back in a sense. Now when it comes to platforms that aren't flat, like say they have pits or holes, getting knocked back is basically the most annoying thing you can deal with. And why do I say this? It's because stage 6 literally starts you off on a broken bridge that is full of boss battles from stage 1. And even though the stopwatch works on them, you don't even have enough hearts because when you beat a stage, all the hearts you got goes to your score, and the game only gives you 5 when you start the next stage. So the best thing to do in this case is to basically just avoid all the enemies until you reach the next zone. Now the other enemies are the bone-throwing boneheads, the Igor dropping birds, and the platforming, I gotta be honest, isn't too bad, and yes, there are Igors jumping around, but by this time, I probably have enough hearts to spare for them to not bother me, which leads us to the final zone. while we can just proceed to the boss room, we won't just yet, because just as enemies respawn whenever you go back to their respective areas, candles will as well. So since we got a new sub-weapon, the cross boomerang, and heart dropping candles, I then took the advantage and grabbed as much hearts as I can. And when we got enough hearts and went to the boss room, out comes the Vampire King himself, Dracula. Now, while it did take me a few attempts, his moveset isn't as difficult, as all you gotta do is stay on the ground and wait for him to shoot the fireballs out of his armpits, which is low enough for you to jump over, which gives you the opportunity to attack his head. And yes, by the way, the head is the weakness. And do you know what happens when you beat Dracula? You knock his head clean off his edgy shoulders. Anyways, that was Castlevania. Whoa, that's a second phase! And his moveset in this phase is quite similar to the first one, except he jumps instead of teleporting around, and is bigger, which is a problem because of a bigger hitbox. However, sometimes he jumps much higher, which would give you an opportunity to move to the other side so you don't get hit. And even after being the boss, an orb still drops from the enemy, which replenishes my health, which I'll definitely take. And as the game ends, Dracula's castle then topples down, and at first I didn't realize this, but the names on the credits, they are spoof reference of people that are involved with the Dracula media, like the late author Bram Stoker and the late Christopher Lee, who played Dracula in numerous films. Yes, Christopher Lee, as in Count Dooku and Saruman, played Dracula. So as much as I hate this game's knockbacks, the crazy hitbox, the overall game is still a good one. It's definitely a classic. And with that being said, if you're curious to know where it all started for Castlevania, I would definitely suggest you try. Oh, come on, man. Could you let me finish my damn sentence? And as much as I want to say good things about Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, I really can't. And I assure you, later on, you will find out exactly why. Now, when you start Castlevania 2, it'll set you in a town, and while the controls, combat, and the setting are the same as the first game, this is where it all ends because the game is very different from the last. And I have played Castlevania 2, but most of the time I just end up losing interest and just went back to the first game. Not because the game is hard, but because it is so confusing and tedious. Now, Castlevania was difficult to some degree, but this is something else. Now, you are allowed to go anywhere, talk to anyone, and on top of that, there's a day-night cycle. And during the day, you can talk to NPCs, go into their houses, and enemies are easier to kill. During the daytime, you can go to churches, which allows you to fully heal, and sometimes, well, most of the times, houses usually would be housing merchants that will sell you some stuff. Nighttime, there are no NPCs, and the towns can have zombies spawn in them, and enemies outside the towns are definitely tougher to kill. And since you can purchase items means that there's currency, right?
No.
Well, yes, but not what you think. Because while hearts are used for sub-weapons in this game, yes, they're also a thing here, they're also used as currency, which can be problematic due to the fact that most things cost a lot of hearts. On top of that, hearts will also give you EXP. Yes, experience points. So the fact that there's somewhat an allowance for traveling freely, currency farming, leveling up, makes Castlevania 2 a hybrid between a platform game and an RPG. And while this experiment is definitely flawed at this time, we can't really say that it was bad for the series because these ideas would later spawn the likes of Rondo of Blood and especially the very well known and loved by many, Symphony of the Night. And I almost forgot to mention that while you can fully heal by going to churches during the daytime, you can also fully heal by leveling up as well. However, when the clues that town folks give don't make sense, when you don't even know what town you're in, when there's no map despite being able to go up or down or any direction really, the fact that you probably don't know what to do in order to fight Dracula, the fact that there's multiple endings, the fact that you can't upgrade your whip the usual way and instead must buy it, the fact that people you buy it from hid themselves inside their houses, like behind walls and inside the floors, and the fact that you're probably walking around mindlessly would make you wish that you're tearing your own eyes out while drinking a cow's grandma's expiredly squeezed milk that shot out of a dog's ass. Why did it drink it? Because it drank it while knowing it's not good, but still committed to drinking it because it doesn't care anymore and wants it all over the place. And yes, this game, it sucks. It sucks. So while we know that I'm already filthy safe sitting casual, I decided to use a walkthrough, which by the way, check out Speedy Walkthroughs as this video really helped me out. What a badass. Which really got me to think. How are kids supposed to figure all this out? Like, even the townsfolk tell you that you should go to this town or that town, but then no one really knows which town they're in to begin with. Like, how are they supposed to even know where they are? Like, how are you supposed to know that you can throw glass bottles of holy water to open up invisible walls and floors? And you know what? I haven't even talked about our objective in this game. So the story of this game takes about 7 years after the last one, and our man, Simon Belmont, has been bestowed a curse by Dracula, and the curse is an early death, which is why he says, what a horrible night to have a curse whenever the moon enters the sky. And fun fact, one of my favorite death metal bands literally referenced one of their songs with the same quote. So in order for Simon to stop this curse, he would have to find 5 body parts of Dracula, retrieve them, go back to Castlevania to resurrect him with those said body parts, and then kill him again. And while it may seem tedious to farm for hearts, you can actually take advantage of it. You see, towns are just as susceptible to have enemies roaming around during the night. But most of the time, there are just green regular zombies, which are pretty easy to kill. So when it's nighttime and I happen to be in towns, I usually use this to take advantage and farm some zombies for their hearts, which I later use to purchase the holy water and the white crystal. And one thing I definitely noticed after playing this game after the first one is that while the aesthetic is equally as gothic, the color choices of Castlevania 2 in my opinion looks more gloomy and depressing, and while the music of the first Castlevania game is dark and has that baroque classical style aka heavy metal before electricity, it does give a more heroic and triumphant feel behind it. While the influence of this game is no different in style, it most likely gives a more melancholic, depressing, and desperate feel behind it, which is very fitting, especially now that we know why the full title is called Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest, because Simon knows he's dying not from illness or of old age, but because of a curse that his arch enemy gave him. And one of my favorite tracks has gotta be Bloody Tears. Alright guys, we gotta shred this out for a bit. So our first goal is to get the Sacred Flame. Why? Because why not? And while we do get to see the same kind of enemies from the first game, like the zombies, the various kinds of skeletons, the mermen, the spear knights except they're pointing the weapon at you, the fucking swooping birds, and the ghosts, there are also a few new ones like the fire zombie, the floating eyeballs, this green thing, literal tentacles, chest bursters that spit fireballs, demons, slimes, hands, fire-spitting bone dragon heads, and mummies. And aside from the enemies, you got bosses, primarily the Grim Reaper, the floating giant head, and last but not least, the Vampire King himself. So once I travel far enough to the right, I got to this little wall that needs me to throw holy water to dissolve it so that the hidden Sacred Flame gets revealed. which then leads us to traveling a bit to the left to find the first castle. And when we got there, it seems like we can't go anywhere simply because there's no platforms for us to step on. That's because we are supposed to equip said sacred flame to be able to see the blue floaty platform. Again, how was anyone supposed to figure this out? However, the platforming isn't to be— oh, come on, I'm stuck, really? And just so you know, that there are also invisible blocks that are meant to trick you and have you fall through them. And when we traveled a bit further in, we were then greeted by a guy that sells oak stakes. And while it may not seem as important, it definitely is. So I bought one, went on until I come across an orb, which we then use the oak stake to break in order to get the concept inside, which happens to be Dracula's rib. Wait, hold on a second. Process? Did anyone spell check this? So we went out, got to another town, used the holy water to break the floors to find the homeowners that sell garlic and laurels, and trust me, you'll need them. And when we went out the house, I then talked to an NPC that exchanged our white crystal for his blue one. Now remember the town I bought the garlic from? Yeah, I went to the area that's right of it, and dropped garlic on the floor, and it spawns a guy that then gives us a silver knife. Like, what the hell is this? After that, we then travel left until we reach a dungeon that leads us to the blank river, and I know it doesn't look like much, but when you equip the blue orb and kneel down for a few seconds, the water surface opens up at like... what? So we went into the river until I... oh, come on, man, really? So I then jumped down, traveled a little bit until we found the second castle. And the process is the same as the first one, which is find a guy that sells the oak stake, use it to break the orb in order to get another part of Dracula, traveled left, use some laurels to grant us immunity so we can walk through the poisoned waters, talk to an oarsman to bring us to the other side, and even though we found the third castle, we still have a few things to do, and that is to travel left and talk to a guy that gives us a blue diamond. Then we went back to the third castle, and while the process is the same as the previous castles, look at this. There's a boss fight that we could just literally walk past him. Alright, I'll try fighting the boss after I get Dracula's eye, which is really easy. Now this boss acts like Castlevania 1's Grim Reaper boss, but slower and easily stun-lockable. Is that a word, by the way? And if you were patient enough to wait until he dies, he will then drop the golden knife, which I never used. And to get to the fourth castle, I then went back to the oarsman while holding the eyeball and the holy water. And instead of bringing us back to the original spot, he then brings us to another path, which leads to the next castle. We then got to a town, I bought some garlic and laurels, traveled left, threw garlic on the floor, which summons another guy that gives us a silk bag, went back to the town, had one guy exchange our blue crystal for his red one, traveled to another town to find a guy that sells a morning star chainwood and bought it off him. And if you're wondering where I got the shield, it's literally Dracula's rib. Yes, all you have to do is equip Dracula's rib in your inventory, and then when you're standing still or when you're jumping, the shield then pops up. And it's actually pretty good as well because it does block enemy projectiles. We then traveled left until we reached a wall to perform the most well-known part of this game, which is holding the red crystal while kneeling down. We then got to Castle 4, walked through invisible walls, possessed Dracula's nail, left, and set up for Castle 5. Travel left from Castle 4 to a river, kneeled down while holding the red crystal to open up the water, traversed in it, broke into walls to talk to a guy that upgrades our whip to be the burning whip, then traveled until we found the entrance for Castle 5. Went to find a stake seller, bought an oak stake, found the boss, ignored the boss, then went straight for Dracula's ring. And even though I went back to fight the boss, it is... And he dropped the magic cross, which is totally useless because you almost never use it. And the reason why I say this is because once you reach the final zone, Castlevania, there are literally no enemies to be seen. And when you get to the boss room, all you have to do is this. And yes, you can let him try to fully spawn, but you know what? Look at this. Each of his attacks at least take 4 or 5 health blips. So if you want to cheese it like a safe standing filter casual like me, all you gotta do is just keep jumping while throwing the Sacred Flame while also whipping, which would then stun lock the boss, disallowing him from moving until he dies. And of course, I get the bad ending. Well, one of the bad endings. Now, Castlevania 2 has 3 endings, and each of them is dictated on how many in-game days were spent until you beat it. So if you beat the game in less than 8 days, you get the good ending, which shows Simon living on after defeating the Vampire King. But shortly after, a hand emerges from the grave, implying that this fight will never end. And if you beat the game after spending anywhere between 8 to 14 in-game days, you get the normal/bad ending, which is what I got, which acknowledges and shows that Simon has lifted his curse, but ended up dying due to suffering fatal wounds. What do you mean fatal wounds? You literally just spam Sacred Flame the entire time. And if you beat the game after spending even longer, you get the worst ending, which shows that Simon is nowhere to be seen, and after doing some research, the good ending where Dracula's hand sticks out at the end is a canonical one, which means that Castlevania 3 falls off from the story, right?
No!
Because Castlevania 3 is actually a prequel to the first game. And this game follows Trevor Belmont, who I believe is the father of Simon Belmont. And what's cool about this game is that while it does follow the linear progression like the first one, it also has its own additions, like the fact that it has branching pathways that leads to different levels and other playable characters such as Grant, Sypha, and Dracula's son himself, Adrian Fahrenheit Tepesh, also known as Alucard. Which is weird because isn't Dracula European? Then why in the diabolical flying son of Medusa's head did he name his child after the bacon grease temperature? And having other playable characters are cool as each of them have their own traits, like Grant who can climb and crawl on walls and ceilings, Alucard who has a range attack and also can transform into a bat, which makes traveling a little bit easier, and Sypha who can shoot magic spells like fire, ice balls, and lightning bolts, but there is a catch, and that she can only throw spells if you found any spell books and that you also have the hearts for it. Remember, hearts in this game is basically your mana. So if you end up being unlucky like me and didn't find any spell books, then she's pretty much obsolete, and yes, she does have a melee attack, but the range of it is very limited compared to the whip. So if you have a second character and you want to swap to them, all you have to do is just press select button. And unfortunately, since this playthrough is basically blind, I wasn't able to get or find any of the other playable characters possible. And if you notice these characters, except for Grant, these are the same folks you see in the first Netflix Castlevania series. So I put on my name, start the game, and while the first level isn't too bad when it comes to platforming, I can definitely see that the enemies are much more aggressive than in the previous games, as they literally throw Medusa heads, bone-throwing boneheads, almost camouflaging bats, and even Igors at you. However, I can't say that the boss is bad news because I happen to be holding the holy water, and, well... And when the game gave me a choice between 2 paths with one of them leading to a boss, I chose the one without the boss like the filthy casual that I am. And, oh damn, I actually like this song. Sorry guys, I gotta try shredding this out. Crap, of course, Spike's bad. And while the level itself isn't bad, I can't really say for this one part. Which is basically because of these damn swooping owls. Like, they are far worse than the swooping birds. Why? Because they're bigger and therefore have a larger hitbox. But overall, this level doesn't have a boss, so I went on and finished the rest of the stage. And this is when I found out that due to the fact that there wasn't a boss in the previous stage, means that I start the next one with whatever HP I have left. And while these jellyfishes aren't really aggressive, killing them will spawn ones that are, as they spread all over the place upon spawn. However, after a few careful attempts, I eventually got to the boss. And this one was quite the aggressive one, as it not only bonks you, but it also runs at you like Juggernaut from X-Men. And the goal here is to only attack its weakness, the head. And just like that, I beat him. And we also got a friend, and her name is Saifa. However, as I said earlier, unfortunately ends up being more obsolete, as the only spellbook I was able to get was the fire one, and eventually I died and lost it and never found another one again. And despite the headless bone swordsman, the moving platforms, a few tight platforming spots, I absolutely wrecked the Medusa mini-boss. However, when I got to the actual boss room, we are greeted by a mini marathon of bosses. And after a few attempts, Stage 5 is... I'll just show you. Like, must I explain what the hell's going on? Like the stairs that lock and limit your movement, the randomly flying shield gargoyles? Like, this was absolutely annoying. And after getting through all that, we are then greeted by a self-scrolling platform. And while it isn't bad, the ones later on are gonna be problematic. Because like I said, whenever you're climbing upstairs, you can't use your sub-weapons. So if there are enemies flying towards you while you're on stairs, you're pretty much left to rely on your whip and your melee attacks. And after we're done with that zone, we then got to the boss's arena. Now, I'm not a fan of this stage, not only because the water pushes you back, but because there are swooping ravens and fishmen just waiting to ruin your peace of mind. Other than that, there are numerous axe-throwing knights that take a while to kill, and after spending what seems like an eternity, we then got to a boss fight, which is a two-headed fire-breathing Hydra. And while it did take me a few attempts, the tactic here is that if you can't stand on the platform far enough to avoid the fire breath attacks, you can still stand on the very edge of the one you're currently standing on, or right under the head if it's standing tall. So I get that sometimes when you're between two heads, it can make you feel a little panicky, but all you have to do is be patient with this fight and eventually you'll beat it. Stage 7 isn't too bad even with the Igor bird spamming and the self-scrolling platform, but instead it's the boss fight, which is a marathon including 2 mummy face, the bonk guy, and lastly the demon who acts similarly to Dracula's second form in the first game. And while it is annoying that the demon's wings has killed me a few times, eventually Stage 8 takes place in the same entrance of Castlevania, the same one from the first game. However, it isn't a 1-to-1 ratio, but rather a sort of revamped version of it. And even though the boss, the Grim Reaper, acts exactly like the one in the first game, I happen to have found a way to cheese him. Stage 9. So to summarize this stage, it's pissing me off. And you want to know who's the boss? It's mimicked. Oh wait, no, it's you. It's literally you. However, Stage 10. Well, I got the time-stopping stopwatch. So even though the platform was quite tight, I was able to just interrupt enemies so I could freely travel without taking any damage, which then leads us to the final boss fight. Now instead of teleporting around and shooting 3 fireballs out of his armpits, he instead summons pillars of fire from the ground, 2 smaller ones that would surround you and then 1 big one that would spawn where you're currently standing. However, after learning about the timing for a little bit, we then entered the second phase, which is this horrifying abomination. And while its main attack is just dropping toxic drops of blood, the fact that it moves around like the Windows XP balloon screensaver can and will cause you problems, especially when it pins you to a corner. And to clear this phase, you'd have to destroy all 5 of his abominable heads, and when you do, you enter the third and final phase, which makes him somehow look like the Egyptian god Ra. And in this phase, parts of the floor will then start flowing, allowing you to hop on it unless you want to fall through holes and die. And his attacks are laser beams that can come out from either of its hands or its head. And to beat it, you'd have to hop on these platforms and aim to whip its head, unless you have projectiles that can reach the head without having to hop on the platforms. And remember that I'm a safe standing filthy casual, so the only time I get to this fight is with equivalent to 2 hits of HP, and also quite possibly the worst weapon to have for this fight. So with that, enjoy the compilation as I pay penance for being a filthy casual. And finally, after 40 diabolical minutes, we finally beat the entire NES trilogy of Castlevania. And the ending then shows the castle crumbling down and Sypha unhooding herself and then resting her head on Trevor's chest as he hugs her. And depending on which character you have in the party is going to dictate who Trevor shares the ending with, unless you had him go solo. And while the canonical one is the one with Alucard, we then found out 28 years later after this game's release date in the Netflix series that the only non-canonical one is the one with Grant or the one without anyone, which is kinda sad. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And again, big thanks to my Twitch subs and supporters on Patreon for slowly but surely making my dream to do this full time come true. And if you want to be a part of it, then you can be a supporter on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. However, do remember to take care of yourself first before even considering. Links to social media platforms like Twitch, Patreon, Twitter, and such below. And if you like obscure or turn-based RPG games, then consider checking out my second channel as it features that kind of content. And if you're wondering, yes, I will eventually cover Symphony of the Night, as it is one of the games that is most well known and most loved by its community, and since I've never played it, I want to find out why that is. Thank you all again so much for watching, and hope you all have a wonderful day.